Hi everyone, welcome. So, my name is Bhavya Aggarwal and I am a senior faculty at Ask IITians. I hope I am audible to everyone. Am I? Oh, great. So, today I'm going to address every one of you towards the top 10 board questions in chemistry. Now, you know that last year has been really tough for everyone, and you guys are no exception to it. Due to the pandemic year, our worlds have twisted. From online classes to reduced syllabus, we have seen it all, isn't it? So, even because of that, what has happened? Even our board pattern has changed. And it is because of that, we have to change the strategy of attempting our board examination. So in this webinar session, I'm not just going to talk about the top 10 questions, but also going to give you an insight about how to attempt your paper in the best possible way. And to do so, I'll be using my own experiences. So without wasting time, let's get started. First, I would like to talk about and give you an overview of this paper. So now in this part, what has happened? We can see three major changes which are happening in this year as compared to the last year. The first change is relating the total number of questions. As you can see, previous year had 30 questions, but this year you are going to get 36 in total questions with 33% choices, which means out of the entire paper, you are getting 1/3 choice, which sums up to 12 questions, which is in itself a good part. Also, we'll talk about the second kind of change, which is in the advancement towards 2 marks questions. Now, last year there were no 2 markers, but this year they have introduced 6 2 markers, which is a good sign. Third major change is they have reduced the long answer questions. Out of 6 which were asked last year, this year it's only 50%, that is 3 questions. Now, why is it good? See, what happens is whenever we talk about any examination or whenever we start anything new, what happens? We are always enthusiastic towards it, है ना? हम एकदम जाते हैं एग्जामिनेशन हॉल में, वी हैव परफेक्ट प्रिपरेशन. सो हमारी फीलिंग क्या होती है? आज तो भाई सब फोड़ देंगे. यही होता है. And eventually what happens? We get bored. We lose our interest. We lose our zinc. And because of that, we lose our marks too. Eventually, what you have noticed is people come out of the examination hall and say, "Yaar, paper बहुत lengthy था. Easy, but lengthy." So, lengthy क्या होता है? Lengthy is just your time management. What we generally do, we start with section A. 1 markers में हम लिखते हैं बड़े बड़े आंसर्स. With time, हमारा इंटरेस्ट लूज होता है, हैंड्स थक जाते हैं, है ना? और फिर जब आप लास्ट में आते हो तो वो 5 मार्कर्स क्वेश्चन होते हैं जहां पे एक्चुअली आपको ज्यादा लिखना था, और हमारा ना तो इंटरेस्ट उतना स्ट्रांग रहता है और ना ही स्पीड उतनी स्ट्रांग रहती है, and we lose our marks in spite of knowing the things. So these all strategies we'll be discussing when we will be talking about the questions, and I'll also be talking about the length of the question which needs to be catered while attempting a question. Okay, so because of the reduced syllabus, these are the major 5 units which you can see on your screen. right? In these 5 units, I am basically going to cater about chemical substances, nature and behavior. This is the portion of chemistry. And this portion has a total weightage of 26 marks. Right? We'll talk about this eventually in like 2 minutes. But before that, I would also like to draw your attention towards one thing. You see, your science examination is on 15th May, right? Even Hussain has faced the same thing. He has also left a 5 marker and found the paper lengthy. So see, what happens? You have your science examination on 15th May. Looking at the current scenario, it looks that kitna dur hai hamara exam. You know? So people have two sorts of approaches. I have seen people with two sorts of approaches. First sort of people are like that we'll start late. Paper इतना late है तो अभी से पढ़ के क्या हो जाएगा? We'll forget everything. So we'll start at the end. Okay. Second sort of people are अरे हमारे pre-boards चल रहे, let's revise it again. Let's revise it again. And you just keep on revising it again and again. When your paper is in B. Both the approaches are wrong, I tell you. Why are they wrong and how to tackle them, right? So that part we will be discussing in the latter part of the video, okay? So first, I would like to draw your attention towards the most important questions और उसके बाद हम last में strategy discuss करेंगे of revising the things. So what I have done in this video is that you know that you have total 5 basic chapters in chemistry in 10th grade. I will be discussing about each chapter, what are the most important topics from where you are most likely to get your question. And I have taken 1 or 2 questions from each chapter to tell you how to attempt the examination. All right. So let's get started. What you can see is on your screen a question. Now, you know what? These questions I have taken from the past board papers, which I found that they have been repeatedly asked. So these papers are, I have taken the total last 15 years scenario. And from there, and Araman, your mic is on. Can you please mute it? Thank you so much, Araman. All right. So what we have noticed is these papers have been repeatedly, like, oh, my bad, these questions have been repeatedly asked in the past 15 years in one way or another. It might not be the same language, but these topics have definitely been asked. So first I'll talk about chemical reactions and equations, your first chapter. Now in this chapter, the most important kind of questions which have been asked are from identifying the type of equations. Second is to write the balanced equation. And out of that, in the identifying and to write the reactions, they have majorly asked from decomposition reactions and redox reactions. They have framed a lot of questions from there. Okay, and the next part from where they have framed a lot of questions are from corrosion and rancidity, which is the application of redox reactions. So what we are going to do is we are going to discuss 2 questions, and this is my first question. What is rancidity? Mention any 2 ways by which rancidity can be prevented. Now this question is of 3 marks. Now, as you know that by looking at the question, I can easily segregate the numbering part for each portion, which is the most important thing. Now, looking at the question, we need to identify which part should consist how many marks. Okay, and accordingly, we need to give the answer. For instance, if it is a 3-marker question and there are already 2 parts in it, now in these 2 parts, the first part is about the definition of density and the second part is having 2 ways. Since they have asked for 2 ways, my most common identification will be that it should carry 2 marks. Each and every point should be for 1 mark. And the definition should carry 1 mark again. Right? Now, after I have identified your marks, the next step is to know the length of the answer. I'm pretty sure आप लोगों में से बहुत से बच्चों ने ये सुना होगा, बोर्ड में कुछ भी लिखा हो, जितना बड़ा आंसर आप लिखोगे उतने ज्यादा मार्क्स यू विल फेच. Wrong approach. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. Okay. So see, the approach, you know that these are theoretical examinations. Indeed, they want a good explained answer. Doesn't mean कि आप कुछ भी लिख दो and they'll give you marks. Okay. So things have to be to the point and you'll always secure marks. In that to the point, I would like to draw your attention that whenever you're giving the answers, make sure that you properly categorize your answers. Like in this question, there were 2 parts, what is and mention any 2. But they have not marked it as first part and second part. है ना? ऐसा इन्होंने कुछ नहीं किया. So as a result, in your answer, you do not have a choice that had they mentioned it that this is your first part and this is your second part, it would be easy for you to mention in the answer and even the checker would find it easier कि कहाँ पर आपका first part खत्म हो रहा है and from where your second part is starting. But here, because that thing is not available, what you need to do is you need to give your answer with proper spacing and with proper line leaving. For instance, if I talk about rancidity, so this is a process by virtue of which the taste and the smell of the food gets spoiled. And it happens due to oxidation. So when I write that answer, I start the next answer from the next line. Make sure that इनका आंसर सिर्फ यहाँ पर खत्म हो गया. So the examiner could actually view कि यहाँ पर एक चीज खत्म हुई है and from the next thing starting from the next line. What if your answer is ending here? How will the examiner understand? For that reason, what you need to do, you have to leave one line just to draw the attention of the examiner that your second portion is starting from here. Okay? And another thing that you can do as is done in the answer here is prevention from rancidity. What instead of directly starting, you have mentioned the part of the question which you are answering. So since he asked about the measures to prevent rancidity, so you're just highlighting that topic that these are the measures or these are the preventive measures. Followed by that, you'll write your answer. Now, your answer could be anything like flushing nitrogen gas, airtight containers, keeping the temperature less. So you need to put your food in the cold spaces or refrigerators. Adding antioxidants, and adding antioxidants means it could be both natural as well as artificial. So this is what you need to write. Any 2 points will be sufficient. Don't write extra. आपको extra marks तो मिलेंगे नहीं, है ना? And आपका time भी waste होगा and energy भी. So don't try to write anything extra until and unless you're not sure of the point. And make sure that whenever you write the points, हमेशा preference order में लिखो. The ones for which you are 100% sure. That point needs to be written in the beginning, followed by your least preferred point and so on. Okay? Another key point is whenever you write your answer, okay, this is something which I have incorporated and believe me, I got really superb marks in my board examination. But I'll tell you the glitch which I did. because of which I lost marks. ठीक है? Instead of like where I had an opportunity to score 100 marks in my chemistry board, I only scored 95. And I'll tell you the problem, the mistake that I did. Now I'll tell you the good thing. What I did is I had a decent handwriting. So I left good spacing. Handwriting doesn't fetch you extra marks. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है that there are extra marks for good handwriting. But yes, bad handwriting can definitely let you lose marks. अब आपकी handwriting जैसी भी है, you cannot change it. So what you're going to do is leave proper spaces. ताकि it's easy for the examiner to understand your words. Okay. Whatever are the key points, just underline them. So in this entire line, what was the key point? That the food gets spoiled. And how does it get spoiled? Because either its taste changes and it gets foul smell. I'll just underline that part. And second important word is, it happens due to oxidation. अब अगर आपने इतना सा लिख दिया, so what happens? Hussain, I'll take the doubts in the end. Okay, so you can definitely ask it again. Okay. So now what happens is when we talk about like the most important key points, the examiner gets a fair idea that I do not have to read the entire thing. ये main keywords थे, इस बच्चे ने ये complete कर दिया, फटाफट से we'll give marks and we'll move to the next question. Okay, so that is the good thing. Same way in the prevention, एक चीज क्या है? Antioxidants. So antioxidants are added, or simply even if you will just underline antioxidants, it will work. Next thing is highlighting by pencil is not that important, Vedansh. Okay, it's not mandatory that you need to highlight it, क्योंकि इतना आपके पास time नहीं होगा ना कि आप pencil निकालो, बार-बार pen use करो. So you just do it with the pen. And spacing couple needs to be proper, like between the two words, right? All right. Another important point is airtight containers in this part. Okay. एक और point आता है कि how would I know that how much answer would I need to write? हो सकता है I remember a lot of stuff from your book. तो मुझे क्या पता मुझे कितना लिखना है? So the length of the answer is very important. Now the key rule is, the thumb rule is that whenever you see a question, you need to, जो भी उसके marks है, marks into 2. That is the range of lines which you need to cover. Suppose it's a 1 marker question. So marks into 2, that is the range. 1 marker question means from 1 line to 2 lines. If it is a 2 marker question, so the number of lines should be starting with the marks. So it's a 2 marker question, इसका मतलब 2 marks या 2 lines to maximum 4. Okay, depending on your handwriting also, किसी की writing बहुत छोटी होती है, किसी की बहुत बड़ी होती है, but this is the general range. It's a 3 marker question means 3 to 6 lines. 5 marker question means 5 to 10 lines for the entire answer. Right? I hope I'm clear till here. Yeah. All right. So I'll talk about the next question again from the same chapter. And this is a 5 marker question. So knowing that it is a 5 marker, we should know how to categorize your answers. In this, see, there are 2 parts which have already been subdivided. First part says, write 1 example for each of the decomposition reaction carried out with the help of electricity, heat, light. Since you have to write one example each, it becomes a question for 3 marks. Right? Yes, Hosan, it's a very important question. 3 marks. Now, for the second part, we have B part, which says, which of the following statements is correct? And why copper can displace silver from silver nitrate? Okay. And silver can, okay, so this is the question. Now see, when we talk about this part, you know that reactivity series is one such thing which is there in, which is used in 2 chapters, metals and non-metals and chemical reactions and equations. Both the portions include your reactivity series, and reactivity series or your activity series is a very important topic for both. Okay. So here, what we are going to discuss or what we are going to do now is, if we have to just write one example. Okay. So, मुझे कोई extra lines नहीं लिखनी, कुछ नहीं लिखना. I'll just start with examples. An example means chemical reactions. Whenever you are giving chemical reaction in the entire paper, kahin pe bhi do, whether they are biological reactions, chemical reactions in chemistry or biology, wherever they are coming, you always have to write the balanced equation. जब भी आप आंसर दोगे हमेशा balanced equation. All right? Make it as a ground rule. Now, so first part is to write the examples. आप electricity के लिए आपके पास एक ही example in your books, in your NCERT, that is the decomposition of water, which liberates hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. So that part I'll write. Next is, if I talk about heat, you have loads of examples for heat. You have ferrous sulfate, which is again very commonly asked. You have silver nitrate. Okay. We have calcium carbonate. We have KClO3. So we have a lot of examples which are there. You can choose any among them. So in this, we have taken calcium carbonate. When it is heated, this gives you calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Now, on the bracket, it is very important, on the arrow, it's very important that we need to mention the type of decomposition. So, ya to aap usko, on the arrow, you can just mention electricity, heat, and light to tell you that this is an example of this part. Or you also can work as, you can simply say electrolysis or electrochemical decomposition first, and in the second line, just write the reaction. Then take the next line, write thermal decomposition or thermolysis. Correspondingly, on the next line, you can write the reaction. Same way, the last part is light decomposition or photochemical decomposition, which is also known as photolysis. Right? So this is the thing that you can easily do. Now we'll move to the B part. Now B part is talking about why copper can displace silver from silver nitrate. So this answer actually comes from your reactivity series, that copper lies at a higher position in comparison to silver in the entire reactivity series. Right? So whichever is having higher reactivity, that metal can easily displace the other metal from its salt solution. Okay? So you'll simply mention that copper is more reactive, and you have to give the corresponding reaction. Now that is very important. Why is it very important? First of all, whenever you have these sort of questions in which there is a chemical reaction, someone's mic. Who's the ultimate gamer? Your mic is on. Can you please unmute it? Please unmute your mic. Okay, thank you. Right. So is it compulsory to write the physical state to? No, couple. It's not mandatory that you need to write the physical state in all the parts. But yes, we need to write in these kind of cases where you have the single displacement reactions or decomposition reactions. Why? Because you know that your metal is in the solid state, but the metal which it is replacing, that metal is present in its aqueous solution. So it's best that we mention it. Okay. Now, whenever you talk about the kinds of questions which can be asked in balancing the equations or to write the chemical equations, see, to write the chemical equations which they'll be asking will be definitely from NCERT. But to identify the type of reactions or to balance the equation, that can be from outside as well. Okay. So even with iron in the steam reaction, we need to mention the state weightage. Right? But yeah, since in this particular question, we knew that we have segregated the marks as 3 and 2, so that would be the best thing that we can do. Okay. So we'll write the explanation followed by the chemical reaction just to fetch the complete 2 marks. 1 mark for explanation and 1 mark for answer. Right? Now, I'll talk about, so that was the major part which I had to discuss from this first chapter, chemical reactions and equations. Now, this is the second chapter, acids, bases, and salts. From this chapter, Supriya, your mic is on. So from this chapter, the most important topics that we get is about the salts. That's right, Shreyas. We have the salts. And in the salts, the most important being POP and baking powder or baking soda. Very commonly asked. Very commonly. Second type is the pH related questions and majorly the application of the pH. So one type of question could be where you have to identify the pH, like you are given with lemon juice, blood, orange juice, paper soap, and you need to tell that what would be their nature, acidic or basic. Okay. Second type is with respect to your application, like that bee sting question is very commonly asked. Okay. Second is about your tooth decay. Again, very commonly asked. All right. So now we will start with the first question of acid, bases, and salts. So this question is a white powder is added while baking breads and cakes to make them soft and fluffy. Write the name of the powder and name its main ingredients. explain the function of each ingredient, and write the chemical reaction taking place when the powder is heated during baking. Now, if you look, this question can be asked as a 5-marker or as a 3-marker. Kapil, the questions which are most commonly asked from here are from salts, majorly being POP and bicarbonate or baking soda. Second, pH related questions. How do we decide that the answer is sodium bicarbonate? Bacha, because that is your baking powder. Baking powder is sodium or bicarbonate. Basically, baking soda is your sodium bicarbonate, not sodium carbonate. Okay, and most importantly, I'll tell you, Samiksha, one more thing. Like, why? See, there is a very important thing that they have mentioned here. Using, like, you need to use this white powder for baking breads and cakes. See, you use both the things technically, baking soda also and baking powder also. You use both the things. All right, but we use baking powder most commonly. Why? The reason is because it contains the sodium salt of your acid. Okay, majorly tartaric acid. Now, what is the function of it? So when you talk about this white powder, this is the most common thing that we use is baking powder and not baking soda. The difference is that your baking powder is also having acid, some acidic content. And we use organic acid basically, majorly tartaric acid. Now, why do we use tartaric acid? We use it because it balances the taste, the bitter taste, which is incorporated by baking powder. That is the major function that we have started using tartaric acid in our baking powder. Okay, so the use of sodium hydrogen carbonate is to release of carbon dioxide. So when it is heated, it gives you sodium carbonate, carbon dioxide, and water. It is this carbon dioxide, you know that whenever a gas is released, it escapes, it rises up. So now it will take away the content along with it because they are stuck to it. So since it will take away the content, the entire thing will rise up and it will become fluffy. So to make it spongy, we use baking powder and it gives off the spongy thing because of the release of carbon dioxide. The same thing happens even in your, when you use it as an antacid. The same thing happens. It gives off the carbon dioxide when it is treated with the corresponding acid of your body. And it is because of that carbon dioxide that you get a burp. And your reaction is over. So the use of tartaric acid is to reduce the bitterness, to overcome the bitterness. Right? I hope I'm clear. Up till here? Everyone? So that is about this part. Now we'll talk about another question, which is this one. So this question says, write the name given to the bases that are highly soluble in water with an example. How is tooth decay related to pH and how can it be prevented? Why does bee sting cause pain and irritation? And rubbing of baking soda on the sting just relieves of that pain. How? So again, this question is a 3-marker and we can easily segregate marks to each part. So your first part Yes, Jayash, you can write the baking soda reaction for thermal decomposition also. So the name which is given to the bases which are highly soluble in water is alkali. Okay, that's alkali. Vignesh, for that you have to wait for another video to talk about this. Like you want all the major reactions and other things. So for that we talk about why another video. All right. So yeah. So you know that all soluble bases are known as alkalis. There, your mic is on. Please unmute. Okay. An example could be the best. All your first group 1 metals. All group 1 metals. Now, you already know about your periodic classification. In your group 1, which is also known as alkali metals, it is just the hydrogen which is not counted as an alkali metal. But line-wise, if you remember, okay, so you know the way that is hai, li, na, kare, rab, se, faryad. Oh, space issues. So this is your entire group 1, in which it is just the hydrogen which is not counted as the alkali metal. Rest all are your alkali metals. Where francium, the last one, is radioactive. Again, I'm not going to take that. Remaining, anyone you can use to give an example, but I would say that go with the most common one. Okay, I know you are intelligent people, but you know that intelligence is to be shown at the right place and at the right time. Otherwise, people don't give you the due advantage. So, board is not the right place to show the entire intelligence of yours. Just go with the most common answers. That would be beneficial for you. Okay. So, the name which is given to your soluble bases is alkali, and the most common example is sodium hydroxide. This will give you 1 mark. Half marks for alkali, half mark for the example. Same way, the next part is how is tooth decay related to pH and how can it be prevented? So how is it related? In this, you do not have to write the entire kahani which is given in your NCRT. Okay, just write the portion which has been asked. So what has been asked? How is tooth decay related to pH? So how is it related? Lower the pH, more will be the tooth decay, right? So lower the pH means the more acidic stuff you'll eat, more will be your tooth decay. Second is, how can it be prevented? Now it is happening because of the acid, right? So if I be able to remove that acidic content from my mouth, of course I can easily prevent it. Okay, so the best way is to brush your teeth after every meal. Okay, because when you digest your food, it gets converted into a thing which is known as pyruvic acid. You might have done that in biology also, which is an acid, and that acid needs to be removed inside the mouth. From mouth, it needs to be removed. Now, whatever is happening inside your body, that's perfect. Mouth mein nahi hona chahiye. Right? So this will fetch you again your 1 mark. The third part of the question is why does bee sting cause pain and irritation? So when I talk about the pain and irritation which is happening because of bee sting, it's all due to the acid which is released in the sting of the bee, and that acid is your formic acid. Okay, and you know that acids are corrosive in nature. They're corrosive in action. So whenever They are there on your body, they will have the corrosive action and will give you irritation and pain. So the best way to remove it off is if you know that it is the acid which is giving you the pain. So if I'll neutralize that acid or if I'll remove that acid, that will ease out my work. And for that, I can use a base, any weak base. For instance, sodium hydrogen carbonate or baking soda. Now, here you cannot use baking powder. You can use baking soda. Why not baking powder? Because you know that baking powder already has an acid in it. तो एक तो पहले आपको एसिड परेशान करिए, आपने और एसिड डाल लिया तो प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी ना. So that is why you need to use baking soda, which will neutralize the formic acid responsible for the pain. Right? And formic acid is the same as the methanoic acid shake. Okay. And yes, your toothpaste, right, Vedansh, it is having basic character. Your toothpaste has bases present in it. Okay. Can you write methanol? Methanoic acid. You can write methanoic acid. No issues on that. All right, guys. So now let's, instead of formic, yeah, you can write formic acid. You can even give the formula HCOH. Even that will work. And you remember what I've told you? That whenever you write your answer, what is your keyword? You just need to underline it. Right? Just underline that. Right? All right. So now let's move to the next part. And that is about metals and non-metals. See, now this chapter, metals and non-metals. And Hussain, if you have any doubt, you can just ask it out. Okay? Even, okay? Don't worry about that. Now, metals and non-metals, what happens? A highly reduced portion this year. The entire metallurgy part has been removed off, chopped off. Now, what is the most important thing remaining in this chapter now is the reactivity series and the ionic compounds. So, ionic compounds, the properties of ionic compounds, the properties of metals and non-metals again are there, but then they are not that important. Okay, because this is something which you have been doing from the very bachpan, from the very childhood. So, of course, your board examiners, they know that this is something which you know, which metal is lustrous or which metal is used to ring the bells of school. So those kind of things are common. The most important type of from the place from where the questions can be framed is the reactivity series and the ionic compounds. So I'll start with one of the questions. Generally, the questions which are asked from the ionic compounds and the properties relating to it are 3 markers or 5 markers, which makes it further very important, क्योंकि वो ज़्यादा marks आपको fetch कराते हैं. Okay. So I'll start with the first electron dot diagram for chlorine and calcium that you need to draw, and the formation of calcium chloride by the transfer of electrons, which means ionic compound. Second portion is identify the nature of above compound and explain 3 physical properties of it. Okay. When I see this question, my marks distribution, इन्होंने तो नहीं लिखा, they'll simply write that it is a 5 marker question. They won't write anything beyond it. But when you look at this question, दोनों ही parts काफी बड़े and काफी important हैं. So I do not know the mindset of the examiner. They might give 3 marks to B part and 2 marks to the above, or vice versa. 3 marks to the above part and 2 marks for the below. हो सकता है ना? That because of the 3 physical properties, it could be. This is like the last 15 to 20 minutes are remaining. Yes, sir? Okay. So in this particular case, what is going to happen? हम दोनों ही parts को will treat it as 3 marker. Just for our simplicity, so that we don't lose marks anywhere. We'll treat it as 3 marker. We do not have to say it to anyone. We just treat it as. And we have to write proper answers in this. Okay. So how will you write the proper answers? See. First, they asked you to draw the electron dot structures for both chlorine and calcium. Now, in the electron dot structure, what we do is we write the symbol of the element, and followed by that, we only write their valence electrons. So if you talk about calcium, Ca is the symbol and there are 2 valence electrons. Whereas for chlorine, Cl is the symbol and there are total 7 valence electrons. And this is your corresponding electronic configuration which is given. Right? So it is these electrons which are my valence electrons, the electrons which lie in the outermost shell. Next part is that they have talked about the transfer of electrons. Right? Since they talk about the transfer of electrons, so you know that these kind of compounds which are formed by the transference of electrons are known as ionic compounds, which is the part B first portion's answer. The nature of the compound is ionic. And in any ionic compound, you need to first create the ions. And by ions, I mean cation and anion. So metals which are electropositive in nature have the tendency to lose electrons. And after losing electrons, they form their corresponding cation, which is this. You know that nonmetals have a tendency to gain electron. So after gaining electron, they become anion. Okay. Now, the simplest way is, you know from your 9th grade a thing related to how to create a chemical formula. So the manner was, you'll write the elements, right? After that, you'll write their valencies. So the valency of calcium is 2, the valency of chlorine is 1. Valency was the combining capacity. You just cross multiply. You know that this is going to be the formula. Now, when you know that this is going to be the formula, you know from here that I have to take 2 chlorines. So 1 chlorine after gaining 1 electron will become 1 chloride ion. I'll take the second chlorine. Okay. I'll take the second chlorine and it will take 1 electron and will become the chloride ion again. So overall, there is a change of 2 chlorine atoms. Okay. So this is how I'm going to write. Once I have created the corresponding ions, then I'll simply do the transference, that this chlorine, the first chlorine, required 1 more electron to complete its octet. And as a result, I can simply transfer it. Same with the second chlorine, which is already having 7 electrons in its valence shell, requires just 1 more electron to complete its octet. And it is after the completion of octet that the atom becomes stable. So from here, I can see that there is 1 calcium ion used, that is cation, and 2 chlorine or chloride ions used. for the anionic part, which gives me the entire formula. Now, since this compound is ionic compound, which is the first part of my second portion, I'll also be talking about the physical properties. Now, these physical properties are properly mentioned in your NCERTs, that these substances, since are formed by strong electrostatic forces of attraction, okay, so it is because of that they will be hard and solids in nature. They will have, since the force of attraction is strong, they will have high melting and boiling points. And all these ionic compounds are soluble in water. All these compounds are soluble in water, right? Now I have two doubts, one by Dia and one by Hussain. So Hussain asks that how can we find how many cells are used to write the electronic configuration of elements? What do you mean by cells here, Hussain? Like cells or shells you meant, Hussain? And for shells part, there was a thing which you've done in 9th grade, KLMN, 2n square rule. From there, you can understand that the first shell always gets 2 electrons, second shell, 8, and so on. Let's just see. Where in the question? Do you have a question? So if you have a separate question in which by chance it was cells mentioned, then you can post it later, like post it and with the medium of Ask Guidance, we'll definitely answer that question. Okay, you can send it to the batch discussion, or there is, so you have a complete batch discussion of Ask Guidance, you can just send it over there, keeping a snapshot, and I'll answer. Okay, don't worry about it. All right. Now, how to make key points. Shoaib, this is a wonderful thing. Key points as in the notes, like for the chapter or for the answers? Shoaib. So, and for that, you can do one thing is you can just directly go to Ask Guidance website, Shoaib, and there are already ready-made notes present there. Just directly download them. And the work is done. Okay. Otherwise, the best way is to write the entire things in short. Like if you have equations, so just write down each equation. For thermal decomposition or decomposition, just write it in one word. One substance breaks into multiple products. 3 types, and with each type, write one reaction. So that will do the entire thing in the concise place. But you'll find the entire thing in our website. Okay. Another question is by Dia. Ma'am, elements having valency 4 are inert gases. Not at all, Dia. Elements having valency 4, remember, are the part of carbon. Carbon has a valency of 4. Is it an inert gas? So the valency of 0 is for inert gas. All right, Dia. Okay. Okay, so that is about this part of the question. Now we have another question, which is to define the activity series of metals. And you have to arrange the metals, gold, copper, iron, and magnesium in the order of their increase in reactivity. Second part is what will you observe? And there are some portions which are asked. Again, if you will see this question, a 5 marker. Okay. Since it's a 5 marker, what do? You know that again the same problem. दोनों ही portions are quite important and काफी बड़े अपने आप में. You have a reactivity series definition, which I think should take one like should be of 1 marks. The metals arrangement again is of 1 marks in the reactivity series. So first we'll talk about the activity series, that is arranging the metals in the decreasing order of their reactivity. So you'll write the entire line and what you'll mention is this part. Just underline this portion and your work is done. Second is to show this order. Now make sure that whenever you see a question in boards, you have to be very sure about the way they have asked the question. If they have asked for increasing order, you have to give the answer in the increasing order itself. Okay, just make sure. So you just write these points, and the very easy way to remember your reactivity series is Kali, Nath, Ka, Mali, Alu, Zara, Fike, Pakata, Hai. So this is the decreasing order of reactivity. कौन होगा आगे और पीछे? This is after hydrogen. So by this way, by learning the simple mnemonics, we can just do the entire work. And it becomes easier for us to just manage it. Okay? The next one is, what will you observe when? First part is, right, Hossan, this is another mnemonic which we have. Please stop calling me a zebra. I like her calling me a smart guy. Okay. Now, well, I am telling, as I said in the very beginning, I'm going to tell you about my experiences, and this is the thing which, this is how I learned it. Of course, Kapil, you'll get the entire PPT after this session. For that, you just have to ask it to this team, the Ask iTunes team, and they'll provide it to you. Okay. The next thing is, what will you observe when some pieces of zinc are put in copper sulfate? Now, this is again a very common kind of question. If you remember, this example is even there in your first chapter, Chemical Reactions and Equations. Instead of zinc, it is iron. Remember? With a change in color, blue colored solution gets converted into green. Right? How to balance equations? For that, I have another video specifically, Haryansh, to talk about how to balance equations. So what you can do is you can ask the team to provide you that video. Okay? Or if you want, we can have a session on it. Learning the solutions color is a bit hard. You hardly have few solutions. You have copper sulfate, which is blue. You have iron sulfate, which is green. Then you have this silver iodide precipitates, which are formed yellow. Barium sulfate precipitates white. Silver chloride precipitates white. Some colors are there only. Potassium permanganate color, which is violet, a violet. Okay. Potassium dichromate, orange. Hana. So these are the things which I know there, but because you have been constantly using and you know that you have just written your pre-boards. So every school have conducted 2 pre-boards, right? Because you've been constantly doing it, I'm pretty sure अब तो याद हो जाता है. इतनी बार आता है ना. So it is that thing that we are going to use. Another thing is about the next part, which is some zinc pieces are put in copper sulfate. Now you know the reactivity series. Now zinc lies above copper. This is the decreasing order. So if it is lying above order, you know that more reactive metal displaces the less reactive metal from its salt solution. And for these kind of questions, yes, you do have to mention their states also. Right. So from here, you will do what? We'll have it as the displacement reaction, and what you'll get is zinc sulfate solution and free copper is released. And this copper, just like in that iron reaction, is reddish brown in color. So you'll get that part. You remember at that time there was this nail which they have dipped, iron nail, and there was a reddish deposition on that iron nail. So basically it is the reddish color which you observe because of copper. All right. Now, the next part is about some silver pieces are put into the green colored ferrous sulfate solution. If you talk about ferrous sulfate and silver, so silver is less reactive as compared to ferrous sulfate or iron. Since it is less reactive, there won't be any reaction. And this is how you need to write. For these portions, you not just have to write the theoretical part that this being more reactive will displace or this being less reactive will not conduct any reaction, but also you have to mention the proper equations. And these equation needs to be balanced, as I've already discussed before. Right? And yes, Hussein, you will get it, just you have to mention it in the comment box. Okay. So that was all about the metals and non-metals. And now I'll be talking about the next chapter, which is carbon and its compounds. So Shoaib, your answer will come from here. Now in the carbon and its compounds, the most important type of questions which are easily asked and very commonly asked are from the covalent bonding. So basically the Lewis structures. And in that covalent bonding, you have your allotropy parts. You have your saturation and unsaturated hydrocarbons, double bond, triple bond, single bonds. Okay. You have very basic part related to nomenclature, very basic. That is to talk about alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes, ethene, methane, alkyne, but not in detail. So majorly the nomenclature portion has been removed off, chopped off, along with the reactions. But yeah, some basic things you really need to know to be on a safer side. Because you see that this year, though the paper will be created, but you never know about the exam. There might be some glitch, or you might get something from the related portion. So you just have to be mentally prepared. So at least the basic things you should be knowing. Second part from where a lot of questions has been asked in the past 15 years is the versatile nature of carbon. They asked theoretical questions like 2 markers, 3 markers even, from the versatile nature of carbon. Okay. So when I talk about its versatile nature and the reason for it, that is catenation and tetravalency. See, abhi tak what we have been doing is we were talking about the 3 markers, 5 markers kind of question. But we must know the approach for even the 1 marker question. So this is the question which I have taken as a 1 marker. Now see, this is a 1 marker. They ask you for 2 characteristic features. The moment you see a question, kuch explain nahi karna hai. Because if you have to talk about 2 characteristic feature and the marks is just 1, to kya hai? Both the parts will have half marks each. आपको सिर्फ name mention करना है 1 is catenation, second is tetravalency. That's it. And just move ahead. Okay, just move ahead. Another question, again, which is a 1 marker, is this one. So homologous series is again a part which is there in your syllabus. So this is a 2 marker. Oh, I said 1 marker, no, my bad. This is a 2 marker question. So what is homologous series? Here you need to define the meaning of homologous series, in which the compounds which makes up the homologous series, they have similar chemical properties, and each member differs by a molecular formula and a molecular mass of 14U. Okay, CH2 moiety or a molecular mass of 14U. Each member of the series will differ by that. Okay. Another thing is that they've asked you to identify the compounds which are homologues. Homologues are basically the members of the homologous series. Okay. So what do I have to do? I have to just see the differences, right? Just see the differences. Now, if you see, I need a total difference of CH2 moiety. Okay. So either if I talk about the same homologous, like as in the part of the series, or if I talk about the same molecule. So if I see this part, C2H6O, okay, and if I look at this part, CH4O, so these two differ by 1 carbon in the molecular formula and 2 hydrogen. From here, we can easily identify that they are homologues of one another. Okay. If you talk about these two, so there is a difference of CH3. It cannot be counted. If I talk about these cases, there is an extra oxygen. So again, I cannot count these. So I have to make sure that the two molecules which I'm taking has to specifically differ by a CH2 moiety, right? All right. So now that was all about the carbonates compounds, and now I'm moving towards the last portion, the last chapter, which is periodic classification of elements, and this is very important. Okay, we'll talk about the periodic classification of elements. Now, in this chapter, the major place from where the questions have been asked are from Mendeleev's and the modern periodic table. Okay, Mendeleev's periodic table and the modern periodic table. Along with that, the trends part in the modern periodic table are again important. So let's see a question here. This is a 5 marker and there are in total 5 points. It means each point carries 1 mark. If it carries 1 mark, the answer should lie from 1 line to maximum 2 lines, nothing more than that. Okay. So when I talk about the first part, why do we classify elements? So we need to classify the elements to study them conveniently. Because how do we classify them? This is just for your knowledge. We classify them on the basis of their similar properties, chemical and physical properties. So it makes us easy and convenient to study all the elements with similar properties at the same place. The way you keep all your socks or all your t-shirts in one place. If you do that, it will be easier for you to find. If you keep it at random places, it will become a mess for you. So just to make ease out of the mess, we have classified the elements. One liner. Second, what were the two criteria used by Mr. Mendeleev? So the criteria which he used was the increasing order of atomic mass, which everyone kept on doing, be it Newland, be it Dobiner, everyone was talking about the increasing order of atomic mass. The second part was similarities in the chemical properties. So these were the, yes, Srihari, you can see the question. So these were the two criteria which were used by Mendeleev, increasing order of atomic mass and similar chemical properties. And he checked the chemical properties by treating the elements with oxygen and hydrogen and created the corresponding oxides and hydrides. And from there, he checked the relation. Then the third part is, why did Mendeleev leave some gaps in his periodic table? Why did he do that? Because he was an intelligent guy. He knew that some other elements are yet to be discovered. And he also learned from the mistake of Newland. Newland did this mistake. He didn't leave any gap. Okay? He didn't leave any gap. So, and eventually what we saw is that there are multiple elements which were found eventually. So Mendeleev knew that these are not the complete elements. There are more elements yet to be found. So he left some gaps, right? Next is, if you'll see the D part, Arvind. In Mendeleev's periodic table, why was there no mention of noble gases? That was because no noble gases were not discovered till then. See, the entire reason for his classification was the reactivity and the elements which exist. Now, noble gases were not discovered till then. Doesn't mean that they didn't exist. Of course, they existed. But since they were not discovered and they were found in trace amounts, so they were not that reactive also. So you know that they are not reactive. As a result, they were not incorporated in the Mendeleev's periodic table because they were not discovered. That was the major reason till then. Okay. E part is, would you place the two isotopes of chlorine 35 and chlorine 37 in different slots because of their different atomic masses, or in the same slot because of their similar properties? So what do you do? Now, technically, they should be kept in the same slot or in the same space of the Mendeleev's periodic table because they have the same chemical properties. They behave similarly. But since Mendeleev's periodic table was based on the increasing atomic masses, this created hindrance in the periodic table. It completely shook. Presence of isotopes was a major reason for the failure of Mendeleev's periodic table. Right? Yeah, it's only for 5 marks on the way. Right? I hope it's clear. So see, even it was a 5-marker, you will not be using more than 6 lines to give this answer. And like every point is one line. So this is how we need to just save time for revision also. Okay. Now let's move to the last question of today's video. And that question is this one. The position of 3 elements A, B, and C in the periodic table is shown below. Give reasons and explain the following? Since there are 3 parts, this question is a 3 marker. Okay, this is just a 3 marker with 3 parts. Now, the first part of the question says that element A is a non-metal. How will you explain that element A is a non-metal? So the first thing that we know is that if you go in the periodic table from left to right, the non-metallic character increases, whereas the metallic character decreases. So that could be a first reason that while moving, since this element A is found to the extreme right, okay, more towards the right side, therefore it's a non-metal because non-metallic character increases along the period. That could be one reason. Second reason is you know that non-metals are electronegative in nature, which means they have a tendency to gain an electron. So if you see any element which is lying in group 17 will have 7 valence electrons. Okay, it will have 7 valence electrons. Now 7 valence electrons means it is 1 electron short to complete its octet and will have a tendency to gain an electron. Right? Since it has having a tendency to gain electron, it has a tendency to become a negative ion. It means A is electronegative in nature and thus a non-metal. But this, you see, is a very long explanation. And here you need to just mention your answer in 1 or 2 lines. So either you just mention that it has 7 valence electrons and has a tendency to gain 1 electron. Therefore, it is electronegative and hence a non-metal. Or you can talk about the non-metallic trait. Both the answers are acceptable. Right? Same way, let's move to the second part, which is atom of element C has larger size than the atom of element A. So that you can easily answer because atom A is a second period element, whereas atom C is a third period element. Right? Which means C will have more shells as compared to A. And as the number of shell increases, size increases. That will be your answer. The last part is that element B has a valency of 1. So as you can see that element B lies in group 1. So group 1 means it is only having 1 valence electrons. So in order to complete its octet or its outermost shell, it has the best tendency to lose an electron and have a complete octet or complete shell, octet or duplet, just to have a complete outermost shell. So since element B has a tendency to lose 1 electron, therefore it is electropositive, and since it has 1 valence electron, it will just lose that electron and therefore it has a valency of 1. And using that reason, you can also tell that element B is a metal if asked. Right? Yes, and it's done, Farhan. Okay. So these are the most important questions which I wanted to discuss, which I wanted to discuss with you. Yes, Saad. Indeed, this was the first thing I talked. What should be your approach to prepare for the exams in the beginning? So for that, I'll give you a simple tip. Okay. See, the tip is don't waste your time right now. Okay, rather utilize this time. See, what happens is, अगर आप अभी से पढ़ना शुरू कर दोगे for the entire thing, तो क्या problem आएगा? The problem would be that you will get bored with time. एंड फिर जब एक्चुअल एग्जाम्स का टाइम होगा तो तुम्हारा पढ़ने का ही मन नहीं करेगा. सेम वे अगर तुम लास्ट में स्टार्ट करोगे तो तुम्हें पता ही नहीं होगा कि तुम्हें स्टार्ट कब से करना है. राइट? So the best thing is that we'll start, like, utilize this time after your pre-boards. Utilize your time to gain some additional knowledge, okay, which is related to your chapters. आपके पास बहुत सारे चैप्टर्स हैं, ठीक है. मेजरली बच्चों को 3 सब्जेक्ट्स में दिक्कत आती है, दैट इज मैथ्स, साइंस, सोशल स्टडीज. राइट? ये 3 सब्जेक्ट्स होते हैं जो हमारे प्रॉब्लमैटिक होते हैं. नाउ you know that if you have any plan, if you have thought of choosing your stream eventually, ठीक है, so I would suggest you to utilize this 1 month, that is from February, like after your pre-boards of school, from February to the end of March. Utilize this 1.5 month to increase your knowledge. Okay, whatever stream that you are going to choose, use this 1 month to increase your knowledge. Okay, so आप 11th की books में से जो भी common topics हैं, start reading it to use your time. And ये क्या करेगा, आपका interest बनाए रखेगा. And आप actually अपनी चीज भी नहीं पढ़ रहे हो, but indirectly you are reading that. And start your preparations again for your 10th grade from April. Because of 1 month, 1 month is enough, since you have already revised everything twice because of your pre-boards examination. So 1 month में आप क्या, again the entire revision, like again the entire thing along with revisions can be easily done. Okay, and your approach should be, because एक time तो आएगा ना कि आप थोड़ा थोड़ा portion भूल गए होगे, right? तो आप क्या करोगे, first you will give a reading for everything. Like, you know, languages take 2 days for revision. 2 days, maximum 3. So 1 week में आपकी पूरी language done, both the languages, right? Then you will take, not even 1 week actually. So 2 days, if I will say 4 days में आपकी language हो जाती है, right? Then you talk about your science, maths, and SST. Okay. So the remaining 11 days, you have to put 11 to 12 days for just doing the entire portion again for science, maths, and SST. So basically, how am I dividing it? 4 days to each. 4 days for maths, 4 days for science, 4 days for SST. I think it's sufficient. आपको generally 1 day लगेगा, 1 day to complete your chemistry, 1 day for physics, 1 day for bio, and then entire thing again on the 4th day. Same way, SST, civics, geography, history, the 4th day wrap up the entire thing. Okay, maths तो भाई जितनी practice करो उतनी कम. And R.D. Sharma, NCERT, those should be your key books. Now, once the entire thing is done, okay, 15 to 16 days you have utilized. अब तुम्हारा काम क्या है? To revise the entire thing. अब revision कैसे करेंगे? Again, if you will do the same thing, तुम बोर हो जाओगे. So don't get bored. Start with your papers, model test papers. Okay, for everything you have, like you have your sample papers, you have your model test papers. See, pattern this year has changed. Doesn't mean questions बदल जाएंगे. कोई क्वेश्चन कम पूछा जाएगा, कोई क्वेश्चन ज्यादा पूछा जाएगा, ठीक है. डिलीटेड पोर्शंस वाले पोर्शंस को हटा देना, वो वाले क्वेश्चंस जस्ट रिमूव ऑफ. अदरवाइज यू कैन स्टार्ट विद योर मॉडल टेस्ट पेपर्स. स्टार्ट विद दैट, ट्राई टू गिव आंसर्स फॉर ईच, एंड एवरी डे ट्राई टू कंप्लीट 1 मॉडल टेस्ट पेपर्स. Okay, so if you have in total, like try to do in total 5 model test papers for each subject. मॉडल टेस्ट पेपर से क्या होता है बच्चा, यू एंटायरली रिवाइज द कंप्लीट थिंग. लाइक अगर आप साइंस का पढ़ रहे हो तो इट्स नॉट जस्ट केमिस्ट्री, इट्स फिजिक्स एंड बायो आल्सो व्हिच गेट्स कंप्लीटली रिवाइज्ड. फिर आप अगेन यू विल सी अनदर पेपर, अगेन यू विल स्टार्ट गिविंग द आंसर्स, अगेन यू विल फाइंड योर मिस्टेक्स कि आप क्या भूले, कितना याद था. again you keep on doing. So यहाँ से आपको ये realize होगा that which portion you are lagging and which portion you are strengthened at. Okay. So this would be my tip. And one more thing is like just an important information that you will get a 1 hour free live session from Ask IT. You just have to approach it in the comment section. That ma'am said that you can get a 1 hour free live session in which you can clear your doubts if you want to know any strategy. कुछ भी बात है, आपको जो भी जानना है, any subject, you can get it. Okay, just mention in the comment section and the people, the concerned team will reply you back. Okay, so we are not done just like कि एक घंटे का एक session हुआ and we are done. So we'll be connected again. So we'll meet in another session, in another webinar once again. Until then, it's me, Bhavya Aggarwal, signing off for today. Okay, take care and stay safe. That's all. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.